When I built the world's fastest Raspberry Pi NAS, I said what I really wanted was native SATA, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, and integrated power in one CM4 board. And wouldn't you know, Radxa just sent me this in the mail. And it's got all that, plus a bonus 5th SATA slot, a slot for an NVMe drive, and not one, but 2 Ethernet ports. You could throw more than 40 terabytes of storage on a Raspberry Pi. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to do a full video on this board soon, so subscribe. On the topic of storage though, maybe you haven't seen 45 Drive's Storinator Jr. Remember that insane enterprise storage array I built in my 16 drives 1 Pi video? Well, Josh from 45 Drives turned that into a sexy little mini Storinator, and he even got ZFS compiled on the thing. Go check out their video for more details. No word yet on whether it'll turn into a real product, but I know I'd love one. For today, I have a bunch of other Compute Module 4 boards to talk about, like the smallest I/O board yet, the MinCab by Uptime Lab, who also made the Pi Blade servers I featured in an earlier video. I'm also going to talk about Home Assistant's new Amber, the reTerminal, and a whole lot more. But before that, let's talk compute modules, specifically getting one. Eben Upton, founder of Raspberry Pi, recently gave an interview to the Register. In that interview, he mentioned 650,000 Raspberry Pis were shipped in July, and earlier in the year, 800,000 a month. That's record demand for these computers, and the demand is far outstripping supply. He said, and I quote, "What's stopping us is basically everything. Everything is on fire. It's unlikely to end until 2023. Of the 650,000 units shipped in July, 100,000 of them were compute modules. And the Pico is also backordered to the tune of 600,000 units. And if you ask anyone, and I mean anyone, about building computer hardware this year, you'll get the same answer. Unless you're one of the top manufacturers with billions of dollars to spend and have existing long-term contracts, there are certain chips and components you just can't get. Network chips, CPUs, USB controllers, hardware is just not available. It's to the point some people are taking used gear and desoldering chips since there's literally no other way to get them. So to see any of these CM4 projects, even in the prototype stage, is a bit of a miracle. And it's not that I love showing things that aren't on the market on this channel, it's just that many projects just can't be made until things cool off. And it's unfortunate. But some things can be made, and I'll talk about those now. The first one is the MinCab. This is by far the tiniest CM4 carrier board I've held. There's actually one board that's even smaller called the Stick, but the thing you might be wondering is who the heck needs one of these, and how is it so small? Well, the answer to the second question is easier. The Compute Module 4 has 200-pin board-to-board connectors on the bottom. One side has the low-speed connections like power and GPIO, and the other has high-speed like Ethernet, HDMI, and PCI Express. To boot up an eMMC version of the compute module, all you need to do is supply it power. And you can still get access to some GPIO pins if you want. And that's what tiny boards like the MinCab do. It takes USB-C power, provides it to the Pi, then breaks out a few I/O pins so you can still interact with hardware, at least minimally, using SPI or I2C or just digital control. Who's it for? Well, that's a harder question to answer. The MinCab doesn't have an HDMI port or USB plug, so the only real use case is to power up a CM4 for headless usage over Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And there are some people who just need to power up a Pi and can do everything they need to do over Wi-Fi. And having some GPIO pins available is also convenient for super simple projects. But I don't think people will be knocking down the doors at Micro Center trying to buy a MinCab. Something that has a lot more utility though is Home Assistant's new Amber. The Amber is powered by a Compute Module 4 and incorporates Zigbee, an M.2 slot, RTC, and optionally power over Ethernet to make the ideal Home Assistant setup. It's currently on Crowd Supply, and the basic version costs $150 and includes a Compute Module 4. I haven't started using Home Assistant yet, but with the number of projects I'm starting to incorporate for power and environment monitoring, and the fact that I use some Philips Hue bulbs in my house, I'm thinking about testing it out soon. Let me know if you'd like me to do some videos on Home Assistant on the Pi in the comments. On the theme of utility, there's another CM4 based product I received a couple weeks ago, and I've been testing it quite a bit, most recently in my AI-powered blower video. It's the reTerminal from Seed Studios. This all-in-one is meant for building custom HMI or human-machine interfaces. Think factories or warehouses where you have a process happening and you need a screen to display information like gauge readings and graphs, and also some buttons to control the process. The reTerminal comes with a demo app to show off some of the built-in sensors like a light sensor, a 3-axis accelerometer, and touch panel, and there's already a huge library of guides for building your own custom interfaces on Seed Studio's wiki. The reTerminal has all of its regular I/O on the left side, including USB-C power input, micro HDMI, gigabit Ethernet, and USB 2. Then on the left, there's a 40-pin GPIO header. The bottom has a standard tripod screw for easy mounting, and the back has a giant heatsink to dissipate heat so the Pi processor stays cool. The back also has a hole for a camera ribbon cable if you want to attach a Pi camera. And there's a high-speed expansion interface hidden underneath a rubber cover. That interface uses a custom connector to supply PCI Express and other high-speed I/O to planned expansion modules, like 5G wireless, an Ethernet switch, or industrial I/O. None of those modules exist yet, but hopefully they will soon. There are a number of other handy features on the reTerminal that I won't get into in this video, but I think it's really cool to see a complete industrial HMI product built around the Raspberry Pi for under $200. The main downside I see is the screen is a little less vibrant than I'd like, but touch accuracy was great out of the box. I think the first expansion module I'd like to see is a battery pack so you could use this thing completely wireless. There are a lot more projects I'm tracking currently, and you can browse the whole list on my CM4 board database, but here are a few more you might like. The Chipsee AIO CM4 156 is an oddly named all-in-one Raspberry Pi computer, complete with NVMe storage, USB 3, and a touchscreen. The cost is a bit steep for the specs, but it's the first iMac-like Raspberry Pi I've seen on the market using the Compute Module 4 for a slim form factor. The CM4 TV stick is a Pi HDMI stick that plugs directly into a TV or monitor like a Chromecast or Fire TV stick. It'd be great for Kodi or RetroPi, and I could imagine popping one in a TV in a hotel room when I'm traveling. Someday. Maybe in a few more years, but no matter, if you're stuck inside or just about anywhere, you could pull out the Zega Mame Gear 2 and play some fun old games. It's a CM4-powered Game Gear replacement board from Z Arcade, and it looks like a lot of fun. But what if fun isn't in your vocabulary and you're all about using Pis for serious business? Well, there are some new industrial boards you might like too. The EDATEC CM4 has a metal enclosure and a ton of built-in industrial I/O, 2 Ethernet ports, and a PCIe slot for a cellular modem. RevolutionPi is working on a RevPi4, a new version of their popular DIN rail industrial PC with a Compute Module 4 at its heart, and it looks like it'll fit right into their ecosystem. Lincoln Bins is working on the CM4 Box Pro, which is an industrial carrier board with options for surface mount, DIN rails, rack, or even Visa mount. And finally, Techbase is working on their ModBerry, Clustberry, and AI Gateway DIN rail Pis. I like the idea of an out-of-the-box Pi cluster, though I imagine it's a bit more expensive than building one on your own. These are just a few, but there are a lot of Compute Module 4 boards coming out, and I couldn't be happier to see the creativity people have with this modular Raspberry Pi. Like I said earlier, I'm planning on a full video on Radxa's NAS board. I'm also hoping to get an overboard, the first Raspberry Pi in ITX form factor, and a Qt Pi, a truly portable Pi tablet, soon. So make sure you subscribe to be the first to find out when I review them. Until next time, I'm Jeff Geerling.